Hej så. Jeg har kigget på jeres svar fra lektionen i går, og igen synes jeg, I gør et virkelig godt stykke arbejde. Jeg kan se, at når I sådan har læst teksten, så har I helt fint styr på, hvad det er, at den drejer sig om. Men der er måske sådan lidt større udfordringer ved det her med at finde kontrasterne i tiden og finde dualiteten. Så derfor så vil jeg lige løbe den her PowerPoint igennem jer, hvor jeg lige sådan opsummerer, hvad er det, The Victorian Age egentlig lige drejer sig om. Hvad skete der lige sådan? Men det er selvfølgelig sådan en overordnet gennemgang. So the Victorian Age is named after Queen Victoria. It's from 1837 to 1901. So that was her reigning period. So she was a queen for quite some time. It's also probably one of the periods in the British history where we saw most changes. It was the height of the British Empire. There is this saying that the sun never sets on the British Empire, and that was definitely evident in this period of time. It's also the time when the Industrial Revolution was at its highest. So it was the time where Britain went from an agricultural country to having an industrialized nation. It was this also means, of course, that we went from having small villages to having huge towns, and huge towns where we had factories, for instance, because the Industrial Revolution called for factories and for having things produced, and especially the coal industry in the north of England. So it was a time of major changes, both social, economical, political, technological as well. The British railway system was also finished in this period of time, and that was also part, again, it kind of, it revolves around each other, because if you have a highly technological production, then that also has an impact on your economy. So a time of many changes. Let's move on to the next slide. So, as I mentioned, the Industrial Revolution was at its highest at this point. Factories were built, and towns around factories suddenly emerged because people who worked at the factories had to live somewhere. It was also the time where you had to have someone working in the factories, so there was an immigration from the country to these towns, and it was not very nice working conditions here. There were also a time of child labor. Children were working in the mines, for instance, because they were small enough to go down there. And it was a time where the working class was meant as, well, they didn't really have very good conditions. There weren't any unions at this point yet. So when we have an emerging working class, that also means that someone are getting richer. So we also have an emerging middle class. And these middle class people, we can say, as I've written here on the slide, they saw themselves as the achievers and the pillars of society. So during the Industrial Revolution, Britain is becoming a very class divided society, where the poorest people, working class, are having extreme social misery. It is something that Charles Dickens has written a lot about, for instance. Moving on. So we won't go that much into the very poor conditions here in the Victorian age, because they're really so horrible to read about. So I've decided perhaps that there is a larger focus on the middle class. It was a time where liberalism was evident, where it was a part of this middle class belief. They believed that it's kind of something that's connected to when we think about the American dream, you know, success and moving forward. You hard work, then you achieve in life. Liberalism is the belief that the architect of your own future. You know, if you do well for yourself, then you will achieve much in your life. It's also a contrast to how they think about, you know, how the middle class think about the poor people, that it's something that is self-imposed. You know, it's kind of your own fault because you're not working hard enough, you're not doing what you're supposed to, you're not trusting in God enough. It was also definitely a time where there was a very strict moral code, thinking about sexuality. Um, it was something that shouldn't really be talked about. But again, at the same time, when you have emerging cities, there is also emerging prostitution. So sexuality was something that was going on, you know, in the dark side of society, and definitely not something that the middle class thought much of. So this also kind of brings us forward to where we can see the duality and the contrast in this time period. Because when we think about the middle class and how sexuality is not something we talk about, but then again we have, you know, achieving class of prostitutes, then we know that they have visitors, these prostitutes, and that is the middle class men. So there seems to be some kind of contrast in the fact that women should be chaste and be kept, be owning up to this moral strict code, but men's, they were allowed to have sex before marriage if they wanted to. And that's also a part of this perhaps more abstract thought of having a very nice facade, that things should look very pretty, and then we have like the shady sides, something that's lurking in the corner. And again, we can say religion was a very big part of this middle class moral code. So they have an idea of preaching Christianity, but then again, they were exploiting the poor workers. That might also seem like a contrast in itself. So this was just a brief sum up of some of the parts of of the um, the Victorian age, but it's something that you can perhaps use for when you read the texts that you are to read for today and tomorrow's lessons. So enjoy and let me know if you have any questions. You can email me on First Class or you can find me on Messenger. Enjoy. See you later.